The cleaning cart made a soft humming sound as Kang Ti-ho pushed it down the long white corridor. The lights above him glowed with a gentle blue color, and the metal floor was cold under his worn boots. It was the middle of the night cycle on the space station, and most of the aliens who lived and worked here were sleeping in their rooms. Ti-ho liked the night shift. It was quiet. He could think about things while he worked. He could remember his wife's smile, the way she laughed at his bad jokes, the sound of her voice when she sang their daughter to sleep. She had been gone for 2 years now, but some nights it still felt like yesterday. He stopped his cart near a large window and looked out at the stars. The space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness between worlds. It was a medical station, a place where sick and injured beings from many different planets came to get help. Ti-ho had never imagined he would end up working in space. Back on Earth, he had been a factory worker, but after his wife died, he needed to start over. He needed to take his daughter somewhere new, somewhere the memories would not hurt so much. So he applied for a job on a galactic station. Any job. They gave him a mop and a cleaning cart, and he was grateful. Ti-ho was one of only 3 humans on the entire station. The aliens here came from dozens of different species. Some were tall with many arms. Some were short and covered in scales. Some floated instead of walking. Most of them looked at Ti-ho the same way a person might look at a small bug. Humans were not important in the galaxy. They were weak, short-lived, and their planet was far from the center of civilization. But Ti-ho did not mind being ignored. He had his work, and he had Sora. His daughter was 6 years old, with bright, curious eyes and her mother's gentle heart. She was sleeping now in their small room on the lower levels of the station. Every night when Ti-ho finished his shift, he would find her curled up in her bed, sometimes still holding the picture book she had been reading. He continued pushing his cart down the corridor, past closed doors and dark offices. Then he heard a sound that made him stop. Crying. Not just one voice, but many, high and thin and desperate, the sound of Bobby's in pain. Ti-ho knew that sound. He knew it in his bones. In the months after his wife died, Sora had cried like that. She had been only 4 years old, and she did not understand why her mother was not coming home. Night after night, Ti-ho had held her while she screamed and sobbed. Night after night, he had walked the floors of their small apartment, bouncing her gently, singing to her, doing anything to help her find peace. The crying was coming from the nursery ward on level 7. Ti-ho had cleaned that area before. It was where the Marathi doctors took care of sick children and bobbies from different species. The Marathi were tall beings with lavender-colored skin and 4 arms. They were known across the galaxy as skilled healers. Ti-ho pushed his cart closer to the nursery. Through the large glass windows, he could see the chaos inside. 12 small cradles floated in the air, and in each one was a Marathi baby. Their skin was blue-gray and almost see-through. Their little bodies shook as they cried. Their tiny hands were closed into fists. Around them, the medical staff moved quickly, checking screens and adjusting machines. But their movements were slow and tired. Their shoulders were bent. They looked like people who had not slept in a very long time. The door to the nursery slid open and a Marathi doctor stepped out. Ti-ho recognized her. Her name was Velis, and she was the head of the nursery ward. Usually she stood tall and confident, but now she looked broken. Her lavender skin was pale, almost gray. Her 4 hands were shaking. Another doctor followed her out. He was younger and he looked just as tired. Velis leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was rough and sad. 5 days, she said. 5 days and nothing works. The synthetic pheromones failed. The sedatives are too dangerous for infants this young. The sound therapy only made them cry harder. The younger doctor shook his head. Without the birth-parent pheromone, their bodies cannot trigger the sleep cycle. It is simple biology, and their birth parents are gone, dead when the colony ship was destroyed. Ti-ho stood very still, listening. He knew he should move on. This was not his business. He was just a janitor, but his feet would not move. If they do not sleep soon, the damage will be permanent, Veli said. Her voice cracked. Their brains are still developing. The stress will destroy them. We have maybe 2 more days before we start losing them. The younger doctor put a hand on her arm. We have tried everything, doctor. Perhaps it is time to accept that some things cannot be fixed. Velis pulled away from him. Her eyes flashed with anger and pain. They are children, orphans. They survived the destruction of their home, the death of their families. I will not let them die because we were not clever enough to help them. She turned and walked back into the nursery. The younger doctor watched her go, then walked away down the corridor, his head down. T-Ho stood alone in the hallway. The sound of crying filled the air around him. He thought about Sara in those terrible months after her mother died. He thought about the long nights when nothing seemed to work, when he was so tired he could barely stand, when he wanted to give up. But he never gave up. He kept trying. He learned what worked and what did not. He learned that medicine was not always the answer. Sometimes the answer was simpler. Sometimes it was just love and patience and a warm body to hold on to. He wanted to help, but what could he do? He was nobody, a janitor, a human, the weakest and most ignored species on the station. T-Ho picked up his mop and finished cleaning the corridor, but the sound of crying followed him all the way back to the supply room. It was still in his ears when he clocked out and walked to his quarters. When he opened the door, he found Sara sitting on the floor in her pajamas. She was supposed to be sleeping, but she had heard him coming and gotten up. She ran to him and wrapped her arms around his legs. "Appa," she said, using the Korean word for father, "you look sad." He picked her up and held her close. She was getting too big to carry, but he did not care. He needed to feel her warmth, her weight, her heartbeat against his chest. "There are some bobbies on the station who cannot sleep," he told her. "They are very sick, and the doctors do not know how to help them." Sara pulled back and looked at him with her big serious eyes. She was so young, but sometimes she seemed to understand things that adults could not. "When I could not sleep after Oma went to heaven," she said slowly, "you would hold me and sing, you would rock me like this." She moved her body gently back and forth, and I would feel your heart beating, and then I was not scared anymore. T-Ho looked at his daughter. Her words were simple, the idea was simple, but in his mind something clicked into place. The alien doctors were trying medicine and machines, but maybe the bobbies did not need medicine. Maybe they needed something older and simpler, something that humans had been doing since the very beginning. Maybe they needed a lullaby. He did not say anything to Sara. He just held her tighter and carried her to bed. He pulled the blanket over her and sat beside her until she fell asleep. But his mind was racing. He thought about the crying bobbies. He thought about what Velis had said. He thought about what Sara had reminded him. Tomorrow he would do something that scared him. Tomorrow he would speak up. He just hoped someone would listen. The next morning, the entire station was talking about the nursery crisis. T-Ho heard the whispers in the corridors as he pushed his cleaning cart. Beings from a dozen different species spoke in worried voices about the orphaned bobbies who would not stop crying. Some said it was hopeless. Some said the bobbies would die within days. Some said the Marathi doctors had failed, and that was the end of it. T-Ho said nothing. He just cleaned and listened. Around midday, he heard an announcement over the station speakers. Commander Brix was calling an emergency meeting in the main conference room. All senior staff and medical personnel were required to attend. The meeting would begin in 1 hour. T-Ho knew he was not invited. He was a janitor. He had no right to be in that room, but something in his heart told him he needed to be there. He needed to hear what they were planning, and maybe, if he was brave enough, he needed to speak. He left his cart in a supply closet and walked toward the conference room. His hands were sweating. His heart was beating fast. He felt like a small child about to get in trouble. The conference room was on level 3 in the command section of the station. The doors were large and made of heavy metal. 2 guards stood outside, checking identities before letting anyone in. T-Ho did not try to go through the door. Instead, he found a small corridor nearby and began mopping the floor. The door to the conference room was not fully closed. He could hear the voices inside. Commander Brick spoke first. T-Ho had seen the commander before but had never spoken to him. Brix was a Tauren, one of the stone-like species from the inner worlds. He was large and heavy, with gray, rocky skin and eyes that glowed like hot coals. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "We are here because of a crisis," the commander said. 12 Marathi infants have not slept in 6 station days. 2 of them are now in critical condition. If we do not find a solution, they will die. And when they die, there will be questions, political questions. The Marathi government will want to know why we could not save their children. There was silence in the room. Then another voice spoke. It was softer and more tired. T-Ho recognized it as Dr. Veli's. "We have tried everything within current medical knowledge," she said. "The infants require a specific pheromone released by their birth parents to trigger the sleep response. Without it, their nervous systems remain in a constant state of panic. We attempted synthetic versions of the pheromone, but they were not effective. Sedatives are too dangerous for infants this young. We even brought in a Quarath empath to try calming them telepathically, but Marathi infants are resistant to mental influence." Another voice spoke up. It was sharp and impatient. "What about putting them in stasis, freezing them until we find a solution?" Veles answered quickly. "Their bodies are too small and too undeveloped. The stasis process would kill them." More voices joined the discussion. Different species offered different ideas. Someone suggested genetic modification. Someone else suggested finding other Marathi who might have the pheromone. Another person suggested simply waiting and hopping the bobbies would exhaust themselves into sleep. But Veles shot down each idea. The genetic modification would take months. There were no other Marathi on the station who could produce the specific pheromone needed. And exhaustion would not bring real sleep. It would bring brain damage and death. The room grew quiet again. T-Ho could feel the hopelessness through the half-open door. These were some of the smartest beings in the galaxy, and they had no answers. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands were shaking. Everything in his body told him to stay quiet, to stay invisible, to not draw attention to himself. But then he thought about the bobbies. He thought about their tiny shaking bodies and their desperate cries. He thought about Sora, and how he had refused to give up on her even in the darkest nights. T-Ho took a deep breath. He put down his mop, and he walked to the doorway of the conference room. Everyone inside turned to look at him. The room was filled with important beings, doctors in white coats, officers in uniforms, scientists with complicated devices, and in the middle of them all, Commander Brix, his glowing eyes fixed on the small human in the doorway. "Who are you?" the commander demanded. "This is a closed meeting." T-Ho swallowed hard. "My name is Kang T-Ho. I am a janitor on the night shift. I clean the corridors on level 7 near the nursery." A few beings laughed. Others looked annoyed. Commander Brix's rocky face twisted into something like disgust. "A janitor," he said slowly. "A human janitor. You have interrupted an emergency command meeting to tell us that you clean floors." T-Ho felt his face grow hot with shame, but he did not back down. "I heard about the bobbies who cannot sleep," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "I think I might be able to help." The laughter grew louder. Commander Brix held up a massive hand, and the room fell silent. "You think you can help?" the commander repeated. "You, a member of one of the youngest and weakest species in the known galaxy. You think you can solve a problem that has defeated our finest medical minds." It was not a question, it was a mockery. But T-Ho stood his ground. "On my planet," he said, "human bobbies also have trouble sleeping. It is very common. Our bobbies are born helpless. They cannot walk. They cannot eat on their own. They cannot even see clearly. And they cry. They cry for hours and hours, especially at night." The room was silent now. The beings were watching him with a mix of curiosity and confusion. "Humans do not have special pheromones," Tiho continued. "We do not have advanced medicine to fix this problem, but we have something else. We have something very old and very simple. We call it a lullaby." "A lullaby?" Dr. Veli stepped forward, her forearms folded across her chest. "Explain." Tiho took a breath. "It is a way of singing, a soft, slow song that we sing to our bobbies while we hold them close. The sound of the voice, the vibration against the baby's body, the rhythm of the breathing, and the movement of rocking back and forth. These things together tell the baby's body that it is safe, that it can relax, that it can sleep." Commander Brix made a harsh sound, like stones cracking. It took Tiho a moment to realize it was laughter. "Singing," the commander said. "You think singing will save these infants? You think a primitive human noise can succeed where advanced Marathi medicine has failed?" Many others in the room laughed too. Tiho felt small and foolish. He wanted to turn and run away. But then Dr. Velis raised her hand. The room fell silent. She looked at Tiho with tired, careful eyes. "How do you know this works?" she asked. "Have you used this method yourself?" Tiho nodded. "I'm a single father. My wife died 2 years ago. After she passed, my daughter could not sleep. She cried every night for months. She missed her mother. Nothing helped. No medicine, no toys, no words. But when I held her against my chest and sang to her and rocked her gently, she would calm down. She would feel my heartbeat. She would hear my voice. And slowly, slowly, she would fall asleep." The room was quiet. Some of the beings looked at Tiho differently now. There was something in their eyes that was not mockery. It was something closer to interest. Dr. Veli stepped closer to him. "You believe this could work on Marathi infants, even though our species are very different?" "I do not know for certain," Tiho admitted. "But I know that all bobbies, no matter what species, need to feel safe. They need to feel that someone is there, someone who will not let go. Maybe the method is different for different species, but the need is the same." Commander Brix stood up from his chair. He was massive, almost 3 times Tiho's size. He walked toward the human with slow, heavy steps. "If this fails," the commander said, his voice low and dangerous, "you will be removed from this station. You will be sent to work in the mining colonies on the outer rim. Do you understand?" Tiho looked up at the massive alien. He felt afraid, but he also felt something else, something stronger than fear. "I understand," he said, "but if there is even a small chance I can help those bobbies, I have to try." Commander Brix stared at him for a long moment. Then he stepped back. Dr. Velis came to stand beside Tiho. She put one of her 4 hands on his shoulder. It was a gentle touch, almost like a mother comforting a child. "Come with me," she said. "Let us see if humans know something that the rest of the galaxy has forgotten." Together, they walked out of the conference room and toward the nursery. Behind them, Tiho heard Commander Brix mutter to the other officers. "Singing to bobbies, what a ridiculous waste of time." But Tiho did not look back. He kept walking. His heart was still pounding, but now it was pounding with hope instead of fear. He was about to find out if love could cross the stars. The nursery was worse than Tiho remembered from the night before. The crying was louder now, sharper, more desperate. The 12 Marathi infants in their floating cradles were shaking and screaming. Their tiny blue-gray bodies were covered in sweat. Their little hands clawed at the air. The medical staff moved around them like ghosts. Their eyes were red and tired. Some of them had been awake for days. They checked screens and adjusted machines, but their movements were slow and hopeless. They had already given up. Dr. Velis led Tiho through the door. Every head in the room turned to look at them. The staff members stared at the human with confusion and doubt. What was a janitor doing in the nursery? What could he possibly offer? Velis raised her voice above the crying. "This is Kang Tiho," she said. "He is a human and he has an idea that might help. I want everyone to watch and learn." A young Marathi nurse stepped forward. Her name was Myra, and she had dark circles under all four of her eyes. "Doctor, with respect, we have tried everything. What can a human know that we do not?" Velis looked at Tiho. "Show them," she said. Tiho walked slowly toward the nearest cradle. Inside was the smallest of the 12 infants. Its skin was so thin he could almost see the tiny heart beating beneath. Its cries were weak now, its strength fading. The screens beside the cradle showed warning signs. The baby was running out of time. Tiho stopped beside the cradle. He looked down at the tiny creature. It was so different from a human baby. Its eyes were larger, its limbs thinner, its skin a color he had never seen on Earth. But when he looked at its face, he saw the same thing he had seen in Sora's face during those terrible nights. Fear, loneliness, a desperate need for comfort. "May I hold it?" he asked Velis. The room went silent except for the crying. Marathi infants were rarely touched by non-Marathi. It went against their customs. The staff looked at each other with worried eyes. But Velis nodded, yes, carefully. Tiho reached into the cradle. The baby's skin was cool and smooth, like touching the surface of water. He slid his hands beneath its tiny body and lifted it up. It weighed almost nothing, lighter than Sora had been even as a newborn. The infant stiffened in his hands. Its crying grew louder for a moment, frightened by this strange new touch. Its little arms waved in panic. Tiho brought the baby close to his chest. He held it the way he had held Sora 1,000 times before. One hand supporting the small head, the other wrapped gently around the tiny body. He pressed the infant against his heart. The medical staff watched in silence. The other bobbies continued to cry around them, but all eyes were on Tiho and the small creature in his arms. Tiho closed his eyes. He took a deep, slow breath, and then he began to hum. It was a simple melody, an old song from Korea. His mother had sung it to him when he was a child. He had sung it to Sora every night after her mother died. The words were about the moon and the stars and a mother's love, but he did not sing the words. He just hummed, letting the sound vibrate through his chest and into the small body pressed against him. He began to rock, slowly, gently back and forth, not too fast, not too slow. The same rhythm his body had learned during all those long nights with Sora, the rhythm of comfort, the rhythm of safety. His breathing was deep and steady. The baby could feel his chest rising and falling. It could feel his heart beating, strong and slow. 1 minute passed. The infant was still crying, but its voice was growing softer. Its little body was not as stiff as before. 2 minutes passed. The crying turned to small whimpers. The baby's eyes, which had been squeezed shut in distress, slowly opened. They looked up at Tiho's face. Large, dark, alien eyes, but in them he saw something he recognized. Curiosity, wonder, the beginning of trust. 3 minutes passed. The whimpers faded. The baby's breathing began to match Tiho's breathing. Its tiny hands, which had been clenched in fear, slowly opened. Its fingers spread out against his chest, feeling the vibration of his humming. 4 minutes passed. The baby's eyes began to close, not from exhaustion or pain, from peace. 5 minutes passed. The infant was asleep. The nursery was still. The other bobbies continued to cry, but the medical staff did not move. They stared at Tiho and the sleeping infant in his arms. Their mouths were open. Their eyes were wide. Nurse Myra rushed to check the screens beside the empty cradle. Her hands were shaking as she read the numbers. "The readings," she whispered. "The stress hormones are dropping. The brain activity is normalizing. It is actually sleeping. Real sleep, healing sleep." Dr. Veli stepped closer. Tears were running down her lavender face from all four of her eyes. In Marathi culture, crying was rare. It meant deep emotion that could not be held inside. How, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. How did you do this? T-Ho looked up at her. He was still rocking gently, still humming softly. The baby in his arms was breathing slowly and peacefully. It is not magic, he said. It is not medicine. It is just what humans have done since the beginning of our species. When our bobbies cry, we hold them close. We let them feel our warmth, our heartbeat, our breath. We sing to them, we rock them. We tell their bodies with every touch and sound that they are safe, that they are loved, that they are not alone. Velis wiped the tears from her face. She looked around at her staff, then back at the 11 crying infants still in their cradles. Can you teach us, she asked. Can you teach us to do what you just did? T-Ho looked at the other bobbies. Their cries were still filling the room, each one a tiny voice begging for comfort. He was just one person. He could not hold all of them. I can try, he said, but it is not just about the movements. It is not just about the sounds. It is about what you feel inside. The bobbies can sense it. They can feel if you are scared or tired or angry. They need to feel that you are calm, that you are present, that all of your attention is on them. He gently placed the sleeping infant back in its cradle. The baby stirred for a moment, then settled back into peaceful sleep. T-Ho turned to face the medical staff. Marathi bodies are different from human bodies. Your voices are different. Your heartbeats are different, so we cannot copy exactly what I did. We need to find what works for you, what can create the same feeling of safety. He walked to a supply cabinet and found a small device. It was a simple tool used to monitor heartbeats. He adjusted its settings. This can create a low vibration, he said. If you hold it against your chest while you hold a baby, it will feel like a heartbeat, a slow, steady heartbeat. He handed the device to Nurse Myra. She looked at it with uncertainty, but she took it. Now, T-Ho said, pick up one of the bobbies, hold it close, press it against your body, and rock slowly, gently, like a wave on a calm sea. Myra walked to another cradle. Her hands were shaking as she reached inside and lifted the crying infant. She held it awkwardly at first, unsure of how close to bring it. Closer, T-Ho said. He walked over and gently adjusted her arms. Let it feel your warmth. Let it hear the vibration from the device. Myra pressed the baby against her chest. She turned on the heartbeat device, and slowly, uncertainly, she began to rock. The baby continued to cry, but T-Ho nodded encouragingly. Good, he said. Now breathe deep and slow. The baby can feel your breathing. If you breathe calmly, it will start to breathe calmly too. Myra took a deep breath, then another. She kept rocking. The baby's crying began to soften. Now hum, T-Ho said. Any sound will do, low and steady. Let the baby feel the vibration in your chest. Myra began to hum. It was a strange sound, different from any human music, but it was low and rhythmic and gentle. Minutes passed, and then slowly the second baby fell asleep. Myra looked up at T-Ho with tears in her eyes. She did not speak. She did not need to. Her expression said everything. T-Ho looked around at the rest of the staff. Now it is your turn, he said. Each of you take a baby. Do what Myra did. It takes time, it takes patience, but it works. I promise you it works. The staff members looked at each other. Then, one by one, they walked to the cradles and lifted the crying infants. T-Ho moved around the room, adjusting arms and demonstrating rhythms, encouraging the tired caregivers and reminding them to breathe. The crying slowly faded, replaced by gentle humming and soft rocking. 1 hour later, all 12 bobbies were asleep. Dr. Veli stood in the middle of the nursery, surrounded by silence for the first time in 6 days. Her staff sat in chairs, exhausted but smiling, each one cradling a peaceful infant. She walked to T-Ho and took both of his hands in 2 of hers. You have given us something precious today, she said. You have given us hope. T-Ho smiled. He was tired too, but for the first time since he arrived on the station, he felt like he belonged. "I just did what any father would do," he said. "I did not give up." The news spread through the station like fire. By the next morning, everyone knew what had happened in the nursery. The impossible had become possible. The Marathi infants, who had not slept for almost a week, were now sleeping peacefully, and it was all because of a human janitor. Tiho woke up in his small room to find Sora already awake. She was sitting on the edge of his bed, looking at him with big, excited eyes. "Appa," she said, "people are talking about you. The alien lady at the food station said you saved Bobby's. Is it true?" Tiho smiled and pulled his daughter into a hug. "I did not do it alone," he said. "Many people helped. I just showed them how to start." They ate breakfast together in the small kitchen area of their quarters. Sora asked 100 questions about the alien Bobbies. What color were they? Did they have hair? Did they smile when they fell asleep? Tiho answered as best he could, his heart warm with love for his curious child. When he left for his shift, he expected things to go back to normal. He would push his cleaning cart through the corridors. He would mop floors and clean windows. He would be invisible again, just another worker in the background. But it did not happen that way. Everywhere he went, beings stopped to look at him. Some pointed and whispered. Others nodded with respect. A group of Tauran engineers, the same rocky species as Commander Bricks, actually stepped aside to let him pass. One of them, a female with glowing green eyes, said something in her language. Tiho did not understand the words, but her tone was respectful. When he reached level 7, he found Dr. Velis waiting for him outside the nursery. "There you are," she said. She looked different today. The tiredness was still in her eyes, but there was also something new. Energy, hope. "I need your help. The Bobbies are sleeping, but they wake up after a few hours. The staff tries to calm them again, but they are struggling. They cannot do it the way you do." Tiho set aside his cleaning cart. "Show me," he said. Inside the nursery, several staff members were holding crying infants. They were doing everything Tiho had taught them. They had the heartbeat devices pressed against their chests. They were rocking slowly. They were humming. But the Bobbies were still upset, still crying. Tiho watched for a moment, then he understood the problem. "You are scared," he said quietly. The staff looked at him with confusion. "You are holding them correctly," Tiho continued. "You are doing the movements correctly, but you are scared. Scared that it will not work, scared that you will fail, and the Bobbies can feel it. They can feel your fear, and it makes them more afraid." Nurse Myra lowered her head. "I cannot help it," she admitted. "Every time the baby cries, I remember the last 6 days. I remember watching them suffer. I am so afraid they will suffer again." Tiho walked over to her. He placed his hand gently on her arm. "I understand," he said. "Fear is natural. When Sora was small and crying, I was afraid too. I was afraid I was not good enough. I was afraid I would fail her the way I felt I had failed my wife." The room was quiet. The crying continued, but the staff members were listening. "But I learned something," Tiho said. "The fear does not go away. You cannot make it disappear, but you can choose what to do with it. You can let it control you, or you can set it aside and focus on something else. Focus on the baby in your arms. Focus on its warmth, its breathing, its small heart beating against yours. Let everything else fade away. Be here. Be present. Be the one safe thing in the universe for this small creature." He took the crying infant from Myra's arms. He held it close and began to rock, just as he had done the day before. But this time he spoke while he rocked. "See how it looks at me," he said. "It is studying my face. It is trying to understand if I am safe. If I am afraid, it will see the fear in my eyes. If I am calm, it will see the calm. So I make a choice. I choose to be calm. Not because I am not afraid, but because this baby needs me to be calm." The baby's crying softened. Its eyes stayed locked on Tiho's face. "Now watch my breathing," Tiho said. "Slow, deep, in and out. The baby feels my chest moving. It starts to match its breathing to mine. This is not something I force. It is something that happens naturally when the baby feels safe. The baby's breathing slowed. Its eyes began to droop. And the humming, Tiho said, beginning to hum softly. It is not about the melody. It is about the vibration, the feeling of sound moving through my body into its body. It is another way of saying I am here, I am real, I am not going anywhere. The baby fell asleep. Tiho gently handed the infant to Myra. She took it carefully, holding it closed the way he had shown her. Now you try, he said. But first, take a breath. Set aside your fear. Remind yourself that this baby does not need you to be perfect. It just needs you to be present. Myra closed her eyes for a moment. She took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed in them. The fear was still there, but it was smaller. Behind it was something stronger, determination, love. She began to rock the sleeping baby. Her humming was soft and steady. The baby stayed asleep. Tiho turned to the other staff members. Your turn, he said. Remember, the method is important, but the feeling is more important. The bobbies can feel everything you feel. So feel peace, feel love, feel safety, and they will feel it too. For the next several hours, Tiho worked with the medical staff. He taught them tricks he had learned with Sora. How to move smoothly when putting a baby down so it would not wake up. How to use white noise to mask sudden sounds. How to tell the difference between a hungry cry and a tired cry and a scared cry. The staff learned quickly. They were skilled healers, and once they understood what was needed, they adapted. Some of them developed their own methods. One doctor discovered that a certain pitch of humming worked better than others. A nurse found that walking in slow circles was more calming than standing still. By the end of the day, the nursery had transformed. The crying that had filled the room for almost a week was replaced by peace. The staff moved with confidence. The bobbies slept soundly. Dr. Veles called Tiho to her office. When he arrived, he found that she was not alone. Commander Brix was there too, his massive stone body taking up half the room. Tiho felt his stomach tighten with worry. Had he done something wrong? But when Brix spoke, his voice was different from before. The mockery was gone. There was something else in his tone, something that sounded almost like respect. I owe you an apology, the commander said. The words seemed to cost him effort, like lifting a heavy weight. I said that singing was foolish. I said that humans were primitive. I was wrong. Tiho did not know what to say. He had never expected to hear an apology from this powerful being. What you did, Brix continued, was not primitive. It was something that many advanced species have forgotten. In our pursuit of technology and medicine, we lost something simple and important. We forgot that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Dr. Veli stepped forward. I have spoken with the Marathi government, she said. They want to honor you for what you have done. There is an ancient title given to those who save Marathi lives in extraordinary ways. It is called Vel Sara. It means one who brings rest. We would like to give this title to you. Tiho felt his eyes fill with tears. He was just a janitor. He was just a father who loved his daughter. He had never expected to be honored by anyone. I do not need a title, he said quietly. I just wanted to help. But Veli shook her head. It is not about what you need. It is about what you deserve. You have taught us something valuable, Kang Tiho. You have reminded us that strength is not always about power. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is be gentle. She took a small object from her desk. It was a brooch made of silver metal, shaped like a sleeping infant. She pinned it carefully to Tiho's shirt. From this day forward, she said, you are Vel Sara, one who brings rest. May you always be remembered for what you have done. Tiho left the office in a daze. His shift was over, and all he wanted was to go home to Sara, to hold her and tell her what had happened. When he reached his quarters, he found her waiting by the door. She ran to him and threw her arms around him. Appa, there were people looking for you. They said you are a hero." He lifted her into his arms and held her tight. She was getting heavy, but he did not care. She was his anchor, his reason for everything. "I am not a hero," he said softly. "I am just your Appa. That is the best thing I could ever be." Sora pulled back and looked at the silver brooch on his shirt. Her eyes went wide. "That is pretty," she said. "What is it for?" Tiho touched the brooch gently. The sleeping infant on it looked peaceful and safe. "It is a reminder," he said, "that sometimes the smallest things can make the biggest difference, and that love is the strongest force in the universe." Sora smiled. She did not fully understand, but that was okay. She would understand someday. For now, it was enough to be together. Tiho carried her inside and closed the door. Outside, the station continued its endless orbit through space. Beings of 100 species went about their lives, unaware that something important had changed. But in the nursery on level 7, 12 Marathi Bobbies slept peacefully for the first time. And in their dreams, they felt something they had never felt before. They felt safe. They felt loved. They felt like they had a home. 3 weeks passed on the station. The Marathi infants grew stronger every day. Their blue-gray skin was no longer pale and sickly. Their cries, when they came, were normal baby cries that the staff now knew how to handle. The crisis was over. But the effects of what Tiho had done continued to spread. News traveled through the Galactic Union about the human janitor who had saved alien Bobbies with an ancient Earth technique. Scientists from distant worlds sent messages asking about human lullabies. Medical journals published papers on the calming effects of sound vibration and rhythmic motion. A university on the Marathi homeworld created a new course called Comfort Practices of Primitive Species. Tiho's life became strange and busy. Important beings wanted to meet him. They sent messages and invitations. A delegation from the Tauran government offered him a position as a cultural advisor. The Marathi Medical Council wanted him to travel to their homeworld and teach at their best hospitals. A wealthy trading company offered to pay him 10 times his current salary just to speak at their events. He turned them all down. Dr. Veles found him one evening in the nursery. He had finished his cleaning shift, but he always stopped by to see the Bobbies before going home. They knew him now. When he walked in, several of them turned their little heads to look at him. One of them, the smallest baby he had held that first night, always reached its tiny hand toward him. Veles sat down beside him. They watched the infants together in comfortable silence. "You could be famous," Veles finally said. "You could be rich. You could travel the galaxy and live like a king. Why do you stay here cleaning floors?" Tiho smiled. It was a question he had asked himself many times. "Do you want the honest answer?" he asked. Veles nodded. Tiho leaned back in his chair and looked up at the ceiling. "When I was young," he said, "I wanted to be someone important. I wanted people to know my name. I thought that success meant having power and money and respect." He paused, remembering his younger self. That boy felt so far away now. "But then my wife died," he continued, "and everything I thought I knew fell apart. I was alone with a little girl who needed me. I did not have time to chase success anymore. I had to focus on what really mattered, keeping Sora fed, keeping her safe, helping her sleep at night when the sadness was too heavy." He looked at the sleeping Bobbies in their cradles. "Those months taught me something that all the education in the galaxy could not teach. They taught me that the most important work is often invisible. It is holding a crying child in the dark. It is cleaning up messes without complaint. It is showing up every day even when you are tired and scared." He turned to Veles. "I am a janitor, that is my job, and I am good at it. I keep this station clean so that doctors can do their work, so that patients can heal, so that children can grow up healthy. That matters. It may not be exciting, it may not make me rich, but it matters." Veles was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. Many species in this galaxy believe that humans are weak, she said. You have short lives, fragile bodies, no natural weapons, no telepathy, no advanced biology. Many beings wonder how you survived at all, much less built a civilization that reached the stars. T-Ho nodded. He had heard these things before. We wonder about that too sometimes, he said with a small laugh. But I think I understand now, Veles continued. You survived because of what you are teaching us. You learned to take care of each other. You learned to be soft in a hard universe. Other species evolved armor and claws and toxins. Humans evolved lullabies. And maybe that is the most powerful thing of all. T-Ho felt his eyes grow wet. He blinked and looked away. We are not special, he said quietly. We just learned that being gentle is not the same as being weak. Sometimes it takes more strength to be kind than to be cruel, more courage to love than to hate. The smallest baby began to stir in its cradle. T-Ho rose and walked over to it. He reached down and let the tiny hand wrap around his finger. The baby's eyes opened, looked at him, and then closed again in peaceful sleep. Every being in this galaxy started as something small and helpless, T-Ho said. Every commander, every scientist, every warrior was once a baby that needed to be held. Maybe that is what connects us all. Not power, not intelligence, just the simple need to feel safe. He gently freed his finger from the baby's grip and stepped back. I should go home, he said. Sara will be waiting for me. Veles stood and walked with him to the door. Before he left, she spoke once more. Kang T-Ho, you may not want fame or fortune, but I hope you know what you have done. Those 12 Bobbies will grow up because of you. They will live full lives, have families of their own, maybe change the galaxy in ways we cannot imagine. And it all started with you holding one small creature in the dark and refusing to give up. T-Ho smiled. That is what parents do, he said simply. We hold on no matter what. He walked through the quiet corridors of the station. His cleaning shift was long behind him, but his feet knew the path by heart. Every hallway, every doorway, every window showing the endless stars. When he reached his quarters, Sara was already asleep. She was curled up in her small bed, clutching a stuffed animal that her mother had given her years ago. In sleep, she looked exactly like she had as a baby. The same soft cheeks, the same peaceful expression. T-Ho sat down on the edge of her bed. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. He remembered all the nights he had sat here just like this, watching her sleep, grateful that she was healthy and safe. He began to hum, the same lullaby he had sung to her for years, the same melody his mother had sung to him. The words were about the moon and stars, about a mother's love that follows her child across the sky. But tonight, he thought about all the ways that love could travel. Across the station, 12 Marathi Bobbies slept peacefully in their cradles. Their caregivers hummed and rocked them gently whenever they stirred. The technique had spread to other wards now, other species. Bobbies of a dozen different worlds were sleeping better because of what a human janitor had taught. In the command center, Commander Brix was writing a report to the Galactic Council. He was recommending that human cultural practices be studied and preserved. He wrote that the galaxy had much to learn from this young species that should not have survived but did. In her office, Dr. Veles was working on a new protocol. She called it the T-Ho method. It was simple: hold the patient close, match your breathing to theirs, speak or hum softly, and above all, do not give up. She believed it could help not just infants, but anyone who was scared and alone. And in a small room on the lower levels of the station, a man named Kang T-Ho sat beside his sleeping daughter and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Peace. He had lost so much: his wife, his home, his old life. He had come to this station with nothing but Sara and a willingness to work. He had expected to be invisible, ignored, forgotten. But somehow, in the most unexpected way, he had found purpose. He had found respect. He had found a place where he belonged. not because he was strong or smart or powerful, but because he knew how to love, how to care, how to hold on in the darkness until the light returned. He leaned down and kissed Sora's forehead. "Good night, my love," he whispered. "Your Appa is proud of who he is." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright against the black void of space. Each one was a sun, maybe with planets, maybe with life. The galaxy was vast and strange and full of wonders. But right here in this small room was everything that mattered. T-Ho turned off the light and climbed into his own bed. He closed his eyes and let the silence wrap around him like a blanket. Tomorrow he would wake up and push his cleaning cart through the corridors again. He would mop floors and clean windows and nod politely to beings who walked past without seeing him. He would be a janitor, nothing more, nothing less. But he would also be a father, a teacher, a Velsora. One who brings rest. And that, he thought as sleep finally came, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.